Okay, so let me record. We are now recording. Okay, and I would love for this to be interactive. I just don't want to be here speaking to you because that's absolutely, I mean, I want to speak to you, but I don't want to lecture to you and not have it be fun. So there's a couple things. So, all right, so before we'll just get started. Good evening. My name is Dr. Lisa Homa. I always forget to say doctor. Thanks so much for coming this evening. Tonight, we're going to be talking about legal issues in nursing. And so just to give a little preface on why I'm giving this talk tonight, I'm not sure if you are aware, I had a legal nurse consultant business since 2008. I have spent a lot of time with trial attorneys working on cases in complex med mal and catastrophic personal injury cases. And so all this pertains, so basically tonight is about, if you know the nursing acronym, CYA, cover your butt. So tonight is all about covering your butts and making sure that you understand which things are litigious. This pulls a little bit off of our readings from this week, and the rest of it we're going to apply right to our practice and how we can be vigilant and avoid depositions and lawsuits. All right, so here we go. Hopefully my thing works. I don't know why. Okay. Woo. Sometimes I have an issue in Zoom that my slides don't advance, so you might hear a little beeping before we go. So the objectives, these are more pertinent to our lessons that we saw in the course. So I'm going to just keep skipping right through, and we're going to head right to laws. And so I don't know if you were like this. I feel like I was a rebel nurse, especially when I was younger. And this is all the stuff I didn't care about, and I actually did not think was applicable to nurses. I thought this was ridiculous. But I have come to realize that there actually is a method to this madness. So we'll start with the first question. So where do laws come from? I think we know this, but we'll just go very basic. So they are put in place to protect the public and society and to prevent and to punish crimes. That's really it. Constitutional law is very simple. Every law derives and comes from the Constitution itself. And you may have already known this. All this familiar to you guys? Not familiar? Sort of. Okay, yes. Okay. All right. So, we're moving on. Police powers are, they're a code of conduct. So how this pertains to a nurse is this would be something like our nursing code of conduct. This would be like the ANA code for ethics, which is really important for us at E-Town because it's one of our professional standards that underpins our curricula. And then statutory laws, there's actually two ways. So these are created from our elected officials. This is why you should vote. The two laws, so of course, they come from constitutional law. And the first is state and territorial legislatures. They're set up enabling statutes. This is case in point, this is our Nurse Practice Act. They spell out our framework and they give our State Board of Nursing the authority, and they describe what it is, the power, and how they can do what they do. The second part of statutory law is based with the legislatures. This comes from state and federal levels. They can regulate our healthcare. So major acts like this impacts us in academia. Americans Disability Act. If you are interested in becoming a nurse practitioner, it would be our scope of practice and the ability to prescribe. So those are all things that impact our advanced practitioners. Oops, okay, so we'll keep going. Okay, and this is also something, again, I don't know, I could just be the only rebel in the room, but I never understood. So in ICU, we always talk about these things, but the question is, do we do them? So you don't have to share, but I feel like nurses are really bad patients. You'll be great for everyone else. I bet everyone in your family has an advanced directive except for you. Just a guess. I don't know if that's true. You don't have to disclose. Okay, so let's just go over to be sure that we understand some of our legal key terms from our text. So an advanced directive essentially is just naming someone. It's a document that names someone. It can talk about preferences, but it's mostly someone who can take care of you if you become incompetent for any reason. Don't tell me if you have one. We'll just keep moving. We'll keep things positive here. Defamation is simply just a civil wrong. And you may think, so street talking, it's talking smack about somebody, and then really it's in a professional setting, and it can create or ruin relationships. And it doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal, but if you put it into context and you think, what if you just started at a new place and someone hurt your reputation right off the bat? And then it prevented you from creating relationships or collaborations that you really need to succeed in your role. It can be really damaging. So it is a really important thing. Defendant is just the person who's being accused of something. A deposition, I hope you are never ever in a deposition. Either of you ever in a deposition? No.
No, but by the grace of God.
I can tell you, I've been in many as an expert. There's two types of depositions that they do now. They call them, so attorneys will, their acronym of how they shorten is, they call them DEPs, DEPS. They call them DEPs instead of depositions. They can do them where you're actually in like a mini courtroom where you're sworn in and you under oath, or they could do them what's called a video DEPs, where they will videotape you. And I feel like those are the worst because they can, the opposing counsel can see all your, they get more data by doing that because they can see when you start to sweat and all those things. So those are areas they're going to attack when they come back after you. So I feel like video DEPs are really intense and they're really struggling. Diversional programs are, they're voluntary, they're confidential monitoring programs for nurses who may have issues with substance abuse disorders or anything like that. And then an expert witness, the true definition of that is just a person who has knowledge, skills, and expertise in an area that an average citizen does not. So when we talk in legal terms, everyone's an average citizen unless you have something above that. And we're going to, I swear we're going to get there to talk about how this all pertains to nursing and our nursing practice. So a little bit out of order because been trying to use other designs in my slides to keep scrambling my thing. So I'm going to start actually out with negligence first. I'm going to read it to you and then I'll explain how all of these kind of come together. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to start with reasonable care first. Okay, so reasonable care is a degree of care that a reasonable and prudent RN would use under the same or similar circumstances. And let me give you an example of this. A long time ago, Nicole, you probably weren't even born yet. There was a hurricane that came into Louisiana and a terrible, terrible thing happened. The whole first floor of the hospital flooded. Nurses and a bunch of different providers were stranded on the second floor in the ICU. Kelly, are you familiar with this? Is it sounding familiar? Everybody else left the nurses there by themselves with the patients in the hospital, and patients, they ran out of oxygen, they ran out of all the things. So these patients were on ventilators and the nurses were prosecuted. It's still like, it's just, the whole situation is just so upsetting. It's beyond upsetting. So essentially, if we took 10 nurses that you knew and we put them all into that Louisiana hospital on the second floor, all reasonable or ordinary care, it's sometimes called, is how would we all act? Would we all act the same under those same conditions? And I'm not sure if we would or we wouldn't. The outlier is that one of those nurses was accused of euthanizing the patients because they had no way to give them anything. And so I guess in some form that nurse is an outlier. So she breached the ordinary care or reasonable standard of care, if that makes any sense. Okay. And then negligence essentially is, negligence is just failure to provide or follow ordinary care. So that is the legal definition. So if you breach in your regular duties that all other nurses would do, that is considered a negligent act that can be used against you. Now I'm skipping around a little more and I'm going to go up to, I guess you can't see me pointing to standard of care. And standard of care is something that's always perplexed me. Until I think I was a testifying expert, I didn't really understand what that was. So I think as an ICU nurse, I should just be able to, for example, if I wanted to know how to take care of a certain cancer patient with a certain subtype, I think I should just be able to look it up and the standard of care should all be laid out there for me. No, that is not the way it works. So what I have come to realize is it's essentially building a case of what the standard of care is. And I feel like nurses are held to the standard of care, yet it is not clearly defined to any of us what the standard of care is. It's really difficult. And so essentially how it is built in layers. So it starts from our regulatory bodies. What does the State Board of Nursing say about how we provide care? And then it builds on, let's say, for example, we're using the oncology patient again. Then we look at this professional guidelines for oncology nurses. And we just keep building all of those layers all the way down to the ANA scopes and standards and the Nurse Practice Act. And so why do we care about the standard of care? Well, we're getting to there, which is our next one, which is malpractice. If we fail to follow the standard of care, that is an act or called malpractice. Essentially, malpractice, the duty or the burden of that is on the plaintiff attorney. So they have to prove four key arms or tiers in order to win a medical malpractice case. The first one is they have to prove that you had duty, which means you're a licensed professional, like a licensed RN, that you had the duty to care for that patient. They have to second is they have to prove breach of duty, which means somehow you didn't follow your regular duty. And then 3, they have to prove that because of your actions, and it's usually along with a whole team, it's usually a cataclysmic state of events, not just one person. So by causation, they have to prove that you were actually part of causing harm. And then the next thing is the damages, proving that your actions led to something terrible happening to that patient. And I always thought, what could there be? Could it really be that bad? And I can tell you, over doing the cases over my time, I have seen just the most egregious things that you cannot even imagine. And I'll share some of those cases with you. We just won a really big, so I left my practice. I'm very proud to say, I was ready to get out. I had enough with attorneys, and I'll tell my bad joke about attorneys really quick. What do you call 5,000 attorneys at the bottom of the ocean? A good start. It's a good start. So I've worked with enough trial attorneys to know that they're really tough people, and they really scare me. They are this is now, of course, stereotyping and discrimination, so I have to be really careful. But just the attorneys I've worked with in my time can change like you snap your fingers, and they could be really emotional, and then 2 seconds later they're talking about their golf game with someone, and I just think, that's not normal. That is not normal. So I was really grateful to win my last case, which we won very big, and I'll share, so I can now talk about it. So I'll share about the details about our case in just a moment. And then plaintiff, so moving right along the middle, it's just the person who perceives that something bad happened to them, and they are seeking some type of resolution for it. And then jurisdiction is just the court, or it's basically, so you could actually have a real case, but you can go to a judge, and that judge can look at your case and say, nah, you don't really have a case. I don't care about it, and I don't want to hear it either. So that's all falls under jurisdiction. And then Good Samaritan law, my favorite example of this. So I think this is the one law they actually talked to us about in nursing school. Most laws they did not. But my favorite one of this one is, so I used to work at Hershey a long time ago, and I used to go to so I'm a mover and a shaker always. And I went with my friends. They had gym membership. So I just went along with them because I just wanted to socialize and see my friends. And while we were at Cocoa Court at the thing, some really young guy, I think he was 39, dropped off of the treadmill and was having a huge MI. I guess he ended up needing a transplant and all this stuff. So I just get off working a night shift, 12 hours, and I'm now doing CPR on a patient, and we're heading, breaking ribs, all this terrible stuff. And I'm getting back in the ambulance rig that I had just walked away from. And I'm getting back in there, being driven back in the ambulance, transporting, doing CPR on this patient. And so anyway, that guy could have done all these things, but thankfully he couldn't sue us because we're protected by the Good Samaritan law. We just did everything we could to save him. And he actually did make it. He got a transplant, and we did see him after. So it's amazing what would happen. Mm-hmm. And tort is just a wrongdoing committed by a person. They call it tort law a lot of the time. It's not a criminal act. It is just a wrongdoing against someone. And I'll give you an example of that in just a moment. Actually, you know what? Let me give you the example now. So this is why if wherever you work, if you start IVs on someone, a good example is in the trauma bay. My favorite, drunk traumas are my favorite. So they come in mean as a junkyard dog, typically combative, and they like to spit or throw and kick. Those are my favorite. So then, of course, we would set boundaries with them and say, okay, well, your leg is hanging off the table, and we need to give you blood and get you to the operating room. We need to start the IV. Do we have your consent? And what do you think the trauma patient says? No, you're not touching me. I'm not doing it. So that creates this whole thing. So of course, nurses we are trained to save, right? So what do? we put the IV in, we say, okay, on 3, we are giving you 3 seconds to stop kicking us because we're going to put the IV in. And lo and behold, somewhere down the line, we realize we threatened the patient, told them if they don't do what we're telling them to, we're going to do it anyway. That's assault. And battery is, we still didn't care. And we went one step further and put the IV in regardless of that. So I'm quite certain I've committed assault and battery many times in my career. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, that's just one of those things. And nurses have been hit with those things before.
But
So,
Lisa,
yeah,
can they actually give consent if their mind is altered because they're inebriated?
I agree. I think we'd be okay. Plus, we're also covered by laws like with emergency, but you're right. Exactly. That's exactly right. I know. It does happen though, for sure.
Yeah.
It's craziness. And then the next part is just regulatory law. I swear it'll get a little bit more interesting here. And really administrative law. So where we practice a lot in Pennsylvania is Section 49 of the Nurse Practice Act. And you're going to talk a ton about this in safety strategies with Dr. Cardenas. And then what is the PA Nurse Practice Act? And essentially it guides everything about our licensure. So how we practice, how we renew, educational requirements, entry to practice. So how and when you can sit for your boards, definitions and scope of practice, describe the board of nursing. It describes categories and membership, all those great things, or everything that we need to know about how we practice and how we renew our practice in the state of Pennsylvania. Okay, here's where it starts to get very colorful. So there's a few things, there are themes, just like in research, there are many themes that I have noted over the years where I see nurses get into trouble. So I'm going to share all those with you so you don't get into trouble in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so the first thing is make sure you do your continuing education. It sounds really silly, but make sure you actually do it. You want to stay relevant and competent, because I feel like practicing nursing is more about practicing in the gray area than it is in the black or the white areas. It's never black or white. It's always a judgment call, right? Defense attorneys hate judgment calls because we do have the right to change our mind. We have a right to critically think, and they hate that. It shouldn't be that way. But there's a couple things to know. So make sure that you support your practice using evidence. I've seen a lot of nurses get into trouble because they cannot reflect the current knowledge. And let me give you an example. If let's say a patient has a nasogastric tube, and not saying that you work or practice in this area, but just an example. 100 years ago, when I went to nursing school and Florence Nightingale was my clinical instructor, she taught us that we auscultate the placement of an NG tube. Anyone know if that's true or false? In current practice, and you may not practice there, so it's really okay.
So it was current practice in like 96, not 2000, but I'm thinking since you're bringing it up, it is not current practice anymore.
I was going to say.
What were you going to say, Nicole?
Oh, when I last had to place an NG tube, that's what I did. I auscultated.
Well, and actually, I see most people doing it. So you try to do it, but really the only way to verify if a nasogastric tube is in place is by X-ray placement. How many times do they not do an X-ray to place it? It hardly ever happens. But that's one of those places, because I've seen NG tubes end up in the worst places ever, and just really bad things. And I've been in several med mal cases where patients have died because of aspirate with a number of feedings and other things like that. So I've seen really horrible, egregious things happen. So that's why it's important to stay current on the evidence. The other thing is, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go
that's
ahead,
in that's in the hospital though, right? Because in the hospital, yes, we did verify through X-ray, but when I worked in home care.
That's a great point. See, how do you check in home care? And so one way you could check in home care is by pH testing. And now think about this.
Oh yeah.
But how many times? But then think about the supplies they give you in home care. I bet they don't give you pH testing kits. That's what I'm saying. So then you have to think about your practice, and you think, and is it a financial thing? Is it just because we don't know thing? Is it because we're not current? but those are
Right.
all things to consider. And also things just are different in home care, right? Versus acute care. The practices are completely different. So those are all things to think about. And the other thing is to have an understanding of your patient's values and belief system. So we practice in Eastern medicine here in the United States. A patient could be from the West and they may not care at all about our practices and don't even want to follow what it is that we do. But if we treat them the way that we think they should be treated here in the US, that doesn't mean that they agree. And that can cause a huge issue with our patients. It was never as much of an issue, probably because we ignored them and we didn't even think about any of their needs at all, but it is very different now. Let me share the research with you. So have you ever heard that if you kill your patients with kindness, you build a strong relationship with them, they are less likely to sue you? Do you think that's true or false?
Yeah, I've heard that is true. I mean, I've heard that from patient experience type people.
Yeah, that is 100% true. That is 100% true. If you build a strong relationship and if you would have the ability. So the only place in healthcare that you can say, I'm sorry to a patient if something terrible happens is if you are in a just culture. And you'll learn all about just culture when you get into safety strategies. But a just culture is an environment where we openly and freely say, we made a mistake. This was a terrible act that we did. And you'll work on service recovery. How can we repair what it is that we did to you? If you are not in a just culture, if it's something you've never heard about, then you would never say that. By saying, I'm sorry, you are admitting that to guilt. That's an admittance of guilt. So you would never say that under those conditions. So it's important to know if you are or you're not part of that organization. The other thing that we know is practice within your scope of practice. So let me give you an example. Let's say you are best friends with a doctor in the ICU and they totally trust you and think you are the cat's meow of all nurses. And they say, it's fine, just go in and pull out that pleural chest tube. It's perfectly fine. And then you realize, oh, that is not part of my standard. That is not part of my scope of practice. And then you get in big trouble because the patient has a pneumo or something really bad happens. They bleed out as you're yanking out the chest tube, whatever it is that's happening, but make sure you always practice. And let me give you an example that happened to me when I worked in neurotrauma, a most recent example. So I had a patient who got TPA, which is a thrombolytic, and I had a resident who I call young residents. This is also discrimination. So I called him a Yahoo, and he came in and tried to tell me after the TPA was instilling that I should go and now place a Foley and start 2 additional lines on the patient. And I said, no. Basically get out of my room, go talk to your chief resident. You're not touching my patient because I already did that and I already got an order for that 40 minutes ago and I'm no longer listening to you. So you have to think about things before you come into my room and try to touch the patient. So that's also something that you have to worry about. And then so there's a couple areas that I've seen. I see nurses, if there are issues with abnormal vital signs, I've seen they do not follow. So think everything you do in nursing, or if you're running teams with them, cause and effect. If a patient has an abnormal vital sign, make sure in your documentation you say what you did about it. Don't just leave it there. Yes.
We got cited on this on our home health survey
worst.
last summer because this is why I don't like Epic sometimes. We're on Epic. We work in the disconnected state of the remote client. Hyperspace, when you have a vital sign that is without the predetermined limits that WellSpan had in place, there's a red exclamation point that shows up in hyperspace. In remote client, you don't see those red exclamation points. And the surveyor was looking in hyperspace, and even though it was actually a normal for the patient, nobody had changed had an order to change parameters from what the established parameters, and we hadn't notified the physician of a change in vital sign. Yeah, it was so frustrating.
Oh my gosh, that is terrible. I've seen just the absolute worst things. Like I've seen cases where a patient had a heart rate of 130 for a sustained period of time. Yeah. And the nurse said, well, I just got the patient up to the bathroom and they came back and they sat down. Yeah, 5 hours ago, they sat down and their heart rate's still 130. At some point, you have to start thinking what's actually happening to the patient that's no longer happening now. So the other thing I've seen, like absolutely catastrophic things happen, is that nurses mistake symptoms to be for something very minor when it is actually the presentation of something really significant. So to give you an example, I had a patient who had bowel surgery. They actually had an underlying perforation that of course we didn't know about. Patient had signs and symptoms of sepsis, and they discharged the patient to home. They sent them home with a rising white count, a really high neutrophil count, low bands, all classic things that the patient's getting really septic. And then 2 days later, she was in septic shock, lost most of her bowel, just horrible, horrible thing. That was one of my last med mal trials, just a terrible, terrible thing. She almost died, was on pressors for weeks, awful. So those are things like you think, oh, it can't be that bad, but it turns into something terrible. And then the other thing I'm seeing an awful lot lately is the failure to advocate. And let me give you an example. So my father-in-law passed away in June and was sent to the COVID unit. He didn't have COVID. He had acute lung injury because he, during COVID, we were all trying to do the right thing. So we dropped off food for them outside the door, not to go in. And of course, during that time, we didn't observe that he was having neurologic decline, right? So he ended up having a neuromuscular disease and then had a swallowing disorder. So basically for 4 days, he aspirated everything into his airway and had a terrible chemical burn and ended up in the COVID unit, maxed out on the vent, like all these terrible things. So the ER nurse, so of course they're lucky I wasn't there because there would have been a homicide had I been there. The ER nurse thought it was a great idea with somebody with potential dysphagia issues to give my father-in-law a cracker to test if he could swallow. I swear I cannot make this up. They are so lucky that I was not there. I wasn't there till after, because of course I was working. But anyway, not a single nurse anywhere advocated for my father-in-law. They didn't try to do anything to protect him until I got there and raised, holy, you know what. But I mean, I don't know if it's where I live geographically, if it's the healthcare system that's near me. I don't know if it's a generation of nurses. I don't know what it is, but I don't see a lot of advocacy, and maybe they're afraid or maybe they don't know how, but something to monitor, especially Kelly, with you looking over your teams. So that's another thing too. And the other thing is there's two other things: failing to document. So again, JCO, the Joint Commission looks at it, not documented, not done. And it truly is just that. If I'm a nurse expert and I read through the record, and if I see that you documented that you told 25 doctors or providers that the patient had X, Y, or Z, you are not going to be called for deposition. Nothing will happen to you. You are literally covered. I never understood that it is truly that powerful. So make sure you document, always think cause and effect. Darn, there was one other thing. And I'm losing my mind. Oh, and failure to do something. The other thing is, if you have a patient who's really at high risk for developing deep vein thrombosis and you fail to put on the sequential devices, that can also be, it's usually a cascade of 95 other things that happen to that patient, but it's the start of something that can happen as well. And just the one last thing. So, who's more likely to sue you? So let me just give you the profile. Who is more likely to sue us for medical malpractice claims? So believe it or not, wealthy patients are more likely for socioeconomically to sue than people that come from a lower economic status. And then of course, the demanding, hard to satisfy patients that feel mistreated, they also tend to be people that are litigious and come after us with a number of those items too. And then intentional torts. So false imprisonment, I am 100% sure in ICU I've done that. I have done terrible things by restraining patients over the years. I know 100% guilty of that in every way, shape, or form. Now, thankfully, they have all these ruling and guidance around restraints. Assault and battery we talked about. Invasion of privacy. I feel like everything happening now is invasion of privacy. It's no longer, everything's fair game. Tell me about your health history. We could never really ask that publicly or openly. Now everybody seems to know. COVID has really changed things there. A breach of privacy is illegitimate access. And a way where you can see this is in the electronic health record, when you get that notice of break the glass or something like that, that definitely tells you you're going to a place that you shouldn't be. And then of course, confidentiality, I think that one is a little bit more straightforward. Anything we hear from a patient, we do not have the right to disclose that to anyone unless they give us permission. And I always wonder how this works when patients in acute care, a lot of the hospitals still have semi-private rooms. So when you're giving diagnostic information to patient A, patient B can hear everything you just said. How does that work? I always wonder how hospitals got away with that, but they seem to get away with it.
It's that curtain, Lisa. It suddenly muffles all of your.
I heard that's the real definition of iron curtain, Kelly. That's what I've heard. There's just some things that just do not make any sense to me over the years, but that's definitely one of them. And then a couple of things. What do I do if I'm accused of negligence? Wow, these are all really positive conversations we're having, isn't it? But these are all great things because unless it truly happens to you, you honestly do not know what to do. So the first thing is to contact your professional licensure insurance. So we're going to talk about the specifics on that in just a moment. If you don't have medical malpractice, if you don't have malpractice insurance, you better get it. And we'll talk about exactly what you need in the next slide because it's so important. I'm not going to say, but the last time this course ran, there were people who didn't have liability insurance. And if you notice, it is required at eTown. And there's a good reason because some of us have a good understanding of what that does to cover your butt because you really do need it. And then just to say again, so the plaintiff, whoever the plaintiff is, whoever is suing you for negligence or malpractice, they have the burden, remember, to prove that you fell below the standard of care. And they have to get a really good expert. And one of the things in my last case that we won big is that they hired somebody who really had no business being an expert and they were putting them against me. I was like, are you kidding? This is going to be like a piece of cake. We are going to totally take them down. And that's exactly what we did. He did not stand a chance. And then common patient complaints. We talked about all those things already. And then supervisory liability. There are people who can be pulled into a lawsuit. So let me give you an example. Attorneys love this. If they want to bring the whole ship down. So what they love to have is bring 25 healthcare providers who were on the floor of an incident and get everybody pointing the finger at one another saying, but it was because you did this and because you did that. They bring all of them into the lawsuit and hope that something sticks so they get more money. That's the whole pool. See, now you're understanding why 5,000 attorneys at the bottom of the ocean is a good start. Yep, it is truly about the money and they are really focused on that, which I don't really appreciate at all. Institutional liability. If you work in a facility, your employer is liable for you as an employee, for every single one practicing within that institution. It's called vicarious liability. So in every lawsuit, the employer is always sued as well. You could be sued and named as a plaintiff, but your employer will always be named as well. And then student liability, we're going to talk, even if you're a student, you need to, but you're already practicing nurses. And so let's get right to what it means and what you need to have. Oops. Okay. So, all right. I hope you have insurance. And here's a couple things that will help you determine what you need. The minimum insurance amount that you need is 1 million / 6 million should be your coverage. That is the minimum. And I'll explain what that means to you. So you 100% need to have insurance because it will pay for your defense fees. It will pay for your attorney. It will pay to cover your wages. It will pay to cover all kinds of things. Any idea how much a trial attorney gets paid an hour? Think big.
Really, really big.
Yeah, like 750 to 1,000 an hour a trial attorney gets paid. So think about if you are accused of something, you will have to take that out of your account and pay that attorney unless you have liability insurance. So you want to make sure you have it. So what that means is for whatever you are accused of, the 1 million means for each event, it will only cover $1 million of that expense for one event. The 6 million is a cap over, that's an annual amount. So if you, this would be a really bad year. If you were accused of malpractice 6 times in that 1 year, that would be horrible. That'd be devastating. You should quit nursing if that happens to you at that point. But for each one of those occurrences, they can't pull more than 1 million. Your insurance can't cover you for more than the 1 million. What do you think the average settlement is for a medical malpractice claim? Any idea how much? Let's talk about the money.
More than $1 million.
If someone let's take the stakes up a little. What if you have a young person like the trial I was just in, who was 41 and he died of a massive saddle PE and he was so grossly mismanaged, it's hard to even describe what happened to him. How much do you think that would be? It's more than $1 million. It's
his wages for the next
right
20 years plus.
That's right. So
Yeah.
the average settlement is about 6.2 million. So when you think about where you fall as a provider with all those things, so that insurance, it actually doesn't go as far as you need to. So one way to understand if you have enough is based on your job and your role. So the more responsibility you have at work, Kelly, then
I was gonna say, you're not making me feel good, Lisa.
I know, but this is all good to know, because if you find
Yeah.
out when something really bad happens, it's not the time to find out. So the more responsibility you have, the more insurance you need. That is the answer that you need. So just keep that in mind. The most minimal amount you need is $1 million, which is about like $100, roughly around $100, something like that. All right. So any questions about that now that I've brought the whole group down with some really depressing things about medical malpractice? Well, we'll
I
talk
thought
about,
I didn't need as much because I wasn't doing bedside care anymore.
you know what? And
Yeah.
I actually thought that too, except you are responsible for a lot.
Right.
So, I mean, at least make sure you have something, because you just never know. So where you
Right,
would fall
no.
into would be the supervisory.
Advisory.
Yeah, that's a total downer. I know,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. This
And-
is a downer.
Is this the NSO insurance?
Yes, it is.
Is that what this is? Okay, good. I have that.
This is.
I mean,
good,
I
but-
only have that because it's a requirement for school.
That's right. And
Otherwise, I didn't have it.
right. And that's what I was saying.
I somehow missed that with only 2.5 classes left to go. So I have some work to do.
Well, I mean, if you say, it depends which part of the program you started in. So our other students, they knew about it sooner, but I'm finding that no one knows about this. I don't know if why no one talks about this. Is a dirty secret, or it is a bad subject, but it is important.
I had it during school, like school 16 years ago. So I had it then, but then I just thought, oh, I'm covered by my employer. Like if anything should happen, and that was that.
And they will cover a little bit, like they may cover a group attorney thing, but the problem is if you do something on your own and it's just you, then you're in big trouble. Because if, like, let's say, for example, you failed to follow your own policy in the institution and they knew that, they caught you red-handed, you're out on your own, sister. They are not going to do anything to cover you under those circumstances. You'll be paying all your own fees. And it's really, really stressful. So just something to keep in mind with your thoughts here. So I'm just going to we are going to do a little comfort. And Kelly, I know you already had the whole spiel on Catherine Kolkaba, who I worship. So I'm not gonna do too much worship, but we are going to do a little comfort activity as we're going. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this. So Nicole, because Nicole's new to nursing, we're very excited to have her in nursing. She's been in general studies torture for a while till she got here. So I'm not sure, Kelly, if you know this, you probably do. So we try to do a comfort activity so that you learn. So hopefully in your mind, the definition of comfort changes for you, or will change for you by the time you graduate. In your last course, Kelly, in the capstone course, you will have an opportunity to write what comfort means to you. We have a quilt. It's being commissioned by a local Amish woman, so we're very proud. It's in E-Town colors, and I'm not a quilter or a sewer. I would be terrible one at all of those. And it is the design of a garden twist, because we feel like we're intertwined with our students, the faculty, the students, the school, we're intertwined with their students. So it's a garden twist design. And I'll find a way somehow to get all of you with permanent marker so that at graduation we'll hang our quilt that shows all of each one of our graduates will get their own little thing on our, and they'll talk about our comfort and how that definition may have changed for you since you've been at eTown. So anyway, this is one of our comfort activities. So the only thing I am going to say, so we're going to talk about, oops, my thing isn't, being comfortable with risk. Okay, I will ask, are either of you a risk taker?
I mean, I
Oh,
slightly,
Kelly, you're a risk
yeah.
taker? Oh, I love this.
Mhm.
I mean, now I'm not promoting that you should be a massive risk taker. All
Right.
I'm saying is it's a mindset, and and I'll explain why the mindset is. So the only thing I'm going to say about our theoretical founder, Dr. Catherine Kalkaba, besides I worship her, is, and she is coming. So she got COVID. She was supposed to come into one of our lecture sections and got COVID, and then was down and out for some time and has not, speaking of giving personal health information, but I mean, she had legitimate reasons, and then was just not up to or not doing things, or things just didn't work out. So she's hoping to come back into our lecture this year. So we haven't scheduled it, but we're working on it. So her main central tenets of her theory are relief, ease, and transcendence. So relief is just the obvious. You give someone pain medicine and they obviously feel better. That's what you hope. Ease is just that, it's like that whole process of like, I 10 minutes ago, I was an absolute disaster, and now I am feeling overall just so much better. And transcendence is taking that patient to a general state of just better in this place than they were just a short time ago. So it's basically, I don't know what if you call that a mindset, but it's an atmosphere of where things they're just in a better state. Okay, so here's where we'll challenge your thinking for just a little bit. So why does risk matter at all? So the answer to this is we want you to be able to lead meaningful change because leaders take the risk first. Are you aware of that? Kelly, do you feel like you do that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Because I have to be the one to tell everybody that we're making the change. And if I don't understand it or take it first, I'm not going to get their buy-in.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very good point. That's right. So I heard this great person, I think this was Einstein, said, the biggest risk is to never take one, because without risk, you won't find any opportunity. So it is a good point. So what we're looking for, in case you haven't already understood the theme, is that we're hoping that through this process, you'll learn leadership skills to advance your role, and whatever that looks like. It doesn't mean you have to be a director or a nurse manager or whatever it is. It just means you'll advance in whatever else you're doing. Okay. And then what is the one thing lacking in healthcare right now? So you could read the slide. I think I have observed trust. What do you guys think it is? Trust all the way
Trust,
around.
absolutely. Trust.
Mm-hmm. I just think all the way around, just not understanding. There's a couple things about this. So what endangers people to believe in their hearts that you have their back? Have you ever been on a team where you don't trust your leader?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, no. I mean, every team I've
Yep.
been on, I feel like every team I've been on, I've had that scenario just about. So the thing about it, one way to make this process be better is when they know that if you have their back first, they're going to be more willing to sacrifice their interests for you. It just makes perfect sense. Eventually, they will do it back to you. It's an amazing process. Oops. Oh, my slides are not advancing. I don't know why. Okay, here. Oh, this is going to be shorter than you think, girls. Okay. Again, the only thing that matters for you as a leader is that you went first. Sometimes that is the most important step to becoming a leader on your own. Oops. Oh, wait here. Since I provided hate earlier, let me at least provide it. Oh, so we have something. something good after
Mhm.
I scared you into medical malpractice insurance tonight. So that's pretty traumatizing. Okay, and then here, so I am part of a group that's doing research, not right at the moment, but I mean, we've pulled a lot of data and we've been observing inspiring leaders. So let me ask you, what kind of leadership style are you? Do you know, Nicole, what you are?
Yes. I am two, but no,
You're-
I can't remember the name of
Okay.
it.
Okay, Kelly, what are you? Do you know?
I'm a diplomat.
Oh, you're a diplomat. Okay, awesome. I'm a servant leader. I used
Oh,
to be,
that's what I am.
okay.
Mhm.
I used to be a transformational leader, and now I've slowly evolved in time into a servant leader. So as we're looking at a number of leadership styles to see how successful they are over the years. So some of the most inspiring leaders, and this comes from usually successful business stories. And I'm just being very honest and down to earth with this. They've screwed up for years. So they're people who may not have been the stellar of all people. They've made a lot of mistakes, but eventually they shared, and then something changed, that they had some kind of epiphany and realization that something in their life needed to change. If you could run something or lead something, they realize that when people come to work every day, do you know, they are loved by someone at home. They're someone's family. They're someone's mother or dad, potentially. They do all that and they leave and come to work for you. So that's a special bond. It's important. The people who, if you are a leader and they report to you, it's an amazing thing. And it's something that should be privileged, honored, and cherished if you have somebody who works for you. And it's important that it starts with you as the leader first. Wow, I am just getting all kinds of hate from my slides. Okay, sorry. Okay, so one bit of advice I would give is to become a student of leadership. I don't know, Kelly, did you always want to be a leader?
No, not at all. I wanted to work in the field, or, work as a bedside nurse, be a stay-at-home mom and work a couple hours to keep my skills up and pay for my husband's dry cleaning. That is what I wanted to do.
My gosh. Nicole, any interest in being a leader?
I think in ways, yes, in areas of my life. I mean, I think for all of these years, I've kind of flown under the radar, and I've been, like, now currently I'm a triage nurse, but I see a need for change, and I want to be the one to help put that into motion.
Wow, that's awesome. So you are, in fact, both of you are change agents, because you had no intention, or you really did not, it's not what you intended to do, but you became that way because I'm guessing there was a need, and you're doers and helpers, and you're going to do that. And you know what, I have to say, honestly, what drove me to do any leadership is that I worked for some of the worst people I've ever met. And I thought at one point I couldn't do any worse than they did. I mean, it sounds so terrible, but I couldn't do any worse than they did. I never learned anything about leadership until I had gone to school. So I would encourage you to become a student of leadership. And then one of the other things, which I thought was very interesting, is one of the best ways to grow yourself is to help someone on your team grow. And I don't know if this is something that comes right to your mind, but what's important about this is it fits very well with our eTown mission, which is to educate for service. So I will just share a little bit about this. So if you think to yourself, how can I be more successful? How can I grow my business? How can I lose weight? How can I find love? How can I turn all those things? The easiest way, the best way to actually do that is to switch your thinking around. You'll gain more objectivity if you help someone else do it first. I think that sounds strange, because the philosophy in education, or in the United States, is that we come first. I don't know, do you believe that? I think we come first. The perspective is on individuals, not community, as it is in Europe or other places. Ironically, when we learn to help ourselves, it all comes through this process of helping someone else. So education is a turning point for many people. I'm not sure if school has caused you to think about more things or more goals, or has that happened to you since you've been at eTown? Have you guys thought more about where do I fit, or has it caused you to have more questions about your life?
For honestly, for me, school was just like this huge eye opener of like all of the endless possibilities and the potential at taking. I really kind of did not like my first year, having to take all of those business courses because I don't
Yeah.
have a business mindset. But learning about leadership and management and just kind of seeing like, oh my gosh, I work in such a toxic environment. And, and like, I don't know, I am smart and and I can do this and so much more. So I'm so grateful for the opportunity for school because I don't think that I would know what I know, you know.
And Kelly, your situation's a little different, right? Like
Yes.
this is,
Yeah.
how would
So
you
mine,
describe it?
it is really complemented. So first of all, I worked at a competing healthcare organization for 10 years. And I think if I had started school while I was still there, like Nicole, I would have been like, oh my gosh, I work in such a toxic environment and learned so much. But going to WellSpan, again, I feel like WellSpan should pay me for promoting them, but I feel like
They
that
totally should.
started, like they encourage, like we have a book study that we do every year as leaders. They have a leadership forum where they bring in well-respected leaders. So I
Wow.
feel like E-Town just really cemented a lot of the stuff that I was learning in the leadership classes that they offered us at work. But I was able to spend, that 5 weeks on it instead of maybe just an afternoon at a leadership forum or something like that. So I really feel like it has just kind of more cemented some of the stuff that WellSpan was already doing. I'll talk to you about after holistic assessment, but the rest of the classes, I mean, global perspective, the first one I did, the community health one, sorry, words aren't coming tonight, was again, just complemented what I was doing that we in the VNA are on the right path. Leadership was just phenomenal. That was probably my favorite class so far. Now, it also helped that I was dealing with some of the stuff that we were talking about in leadership during that 5-week.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
crucial conversations and some, mentoring a clinical supervisor, care of the chronically ill, like that was not what I was expecting that class to be. And so that really helped me with advocating for John and some of the things we learned about pain management strategy. Like, so it really just like, the way my classes lined up, I think was a divine appointment with the way things were going in my life when I was taking those classes. So I love it when that happens. And
so do I.
yeah,
so do I.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what that means for holistic assessment, but
It's almost at the end. You'll just say, Kelly, the end is near.
I know, that's my last class before capstone.
Wow, that's awesome. Oh, that's so awesome.
But yeah, no, I have loved this. I have felt like like I've heard a lot of people say, oh, getting your BS is just a bunch of BS. And I really feel like what you guys have done with this program has really made it practical to what we are going through in our clinical practice, regardless of where you are along your clinical practice.
Oh, that's so awesome. I swear, Kelly, I did not pay you to say that, correct?
Neither you nor WellSpan is paying.
Okay. All right, that is awesome. It is awesome. I guess I feel like I have to at least make you aware of leadership principles, because you just never know when those opportunities are going to come. And I feel like you have to be prepared, even if it wasn't something you intended to do.
Yeah.
I
got tricked. So
Yes.
I came from the field into a field staff educator position, like staff development, because just like you, the girl doing it was horrible. And I'm like, I can do better than this. So I recreated our entire orientation program. And then my boss just kept adding a few more things to me and kind of really mentored me. And then, stuck me in a leadership role. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then, and then it just, went from there. So
Oh, it's all,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
it was a bait and switch. It was a bait
Yes.
and switch.
I hate when that happens. And now here you are running.
Here I am.
You'll,
Yeah.
you'll be the next CNO taking over for Teresa in the one of these times. Nicole, you, I'm hoping I'll get her back
Yeah.
in leadership to come in. They were just, we had the greatest guest speakers come into leadership. And I didn't pay them either, but they were amazing. Like I felt so choked up at the end of our session with them. It was like just unbelievable. But a little bit of what we're talking about is a little bit what she shared. She's now like running WellSpan.
Yeah.
So it's like amazing talking to her. But anyway, awesome things here happening. And actually, the other thing I will say is I was part of, and you probably know this, part of the first Penn State cohort in their RN to BSN program, and it was a complete and utter disaster. I still remember her name, who was the director. She was so bad. We didn't know where we were doing. Like we basically did everything on our own. And I just thought, like, it has to be better than this. Like it has to just be better than this. It just
the Penn State World Campus RN to BSN is still like that because my coworker. Yeah, my coworker, and I'm like, come to me, come to U-Town.
I mean, just because you're working professionals doesn't mean that we can't expand our knowledge and talk about all this other stuff. So we're not focused on fundamentals, but we're focused on changing things. I mean, it's incredible. But anyway, it's been an awesome dream to get to know all of you and to be part of like trying to build something better. Been really exciting. And then, so one good reason, and Kelly, you guys could speak to this. So why are we talking about all this? Because I feel like nurses are hemorrhaging where we are right now. How are you guys feeling about that? What are you seeing where you are? Nurses leaving at an unprecedented rate, or is it kind of stable there where you guys are?
So where I am, we have 5 triage nurses. And so we're stable. We stay. But the floor staff, which consists of MAs and LPNs, that's a high turnover rate. I mean, they're going constantly. And I think it's because as RNs, we have great hours. We don't work weekends. We don't work holidays. And we have hospital pay for a doctor's office. So, we'll put up with the BS because we don't have to,
that's a great
work nights or
Yeah, that's a great point. Kelly, how about you?
We're seeing, I wouldn't say it. I mean, we're definitely seeing people leave. We're seeing people retire earlier than they would have, I think is a big thing. We're not doing, so LPN, I'm like all over the place, sorry. Due to the COVID issues, the hospital is now hiring LPNs again. So we're losing LPNs that we would have gotten home care because the hospital can pay them more, and they're putting their magnet stuff on hold because they need people to take care of. So the LPNs are ecstatic that they can get hospital experience again, which in the long run will actually work out better for us because we've been struggling with getting LPNs that have the clinical skills needed for home health because they're not getting that from the hospitals anymore. So they're either in SNFs where they're just pushing pills or in doctor's offices where they're really not getting that skill set that you need to be on your own in a home care agency. So I keep telling my director of nursing, like, when this is done and they start phasing the LPNs out, they'll have had all this experience and we'll be able to get them back with, the acute care experience that we need them to have.
Oh my God. I never ever, when I started out as an RN 100 years ago, I never ever thought that I would see what has happened, like LPNs come back. Yeah. I mean, they left the floors because we were just riddled with all these issues because they can't do push meds. There's all these can'ts surrounding their practice. But it's unbelievable to see everything come around how it is. It's just amazing. I never ever thought I would see this.
Crazy.
And I would just say one other thing. So if you've ever been in simulation, let me just have you think about this. If you are so let's say you're in a simulation with 3 people, 2 people are acting and the third person is the observer. Which one does the learning? Any thoughts?
I don't even know what a simulation is.
Oh, okay, have you ever been like, there's a mannequin and you have a mannequin and you're working around, I was thinking, oh, well, there's a mannequin and then we bring in, so this is where you practice scenarios and things like this. Oh, Nicole, we're going to have to work on this with you.
Is this clinical?
Yeah, this is clinical.
Okay.
But I mean, a lot of times like health systems, like Penn State Health will spend time in simulation working on famous medical malpractice cases so that we don't create the same error. But a lot of health systems, and maybe now on the front line in the pandemic, they can't even do it because staffing is just terrible right now. But okay, so let's say we're creating a scenario for something, or if let's say you were in BLS when you were, oh no, you would only do scenarios in ACLS. So that you wouldn't have a reference. All right, well, that's a bad example. So well, let me just share the answer to that for Kelly, because Kelly, the people who do the learning are the observers. Interesting, right? You think the people acting out the scenario?
I would have thought the acting it out would have been, you would have learned more by doing and observing.
Yeah, but actually
I would have said that too.
Yeah, I know. I actually thought the same thing, but I thought it was very interesting that it is not. That is absolutely not. So that is the end of my spiel. Just wanted to talk to you again about your leadership and cultivating your leadership. I know this is not leadership, but I feel like Global Trends is all about finding out about yourself, knowing where you are positioned and where you're well suited to move in nursing. I think it's a great thing to understand. And then we don't want you to repeat the same mistakes by doing the same things that historically we know have not worked in the past. So we want to be sure that we're part of the change maker, creating change agents here at the college, whether you knew you were going to do that or not. Any questions or anything you want to share, or? No, you're like, it's the end of my day. Home, wrap it up. Reel in the tubes. We've had it.
Yeah, Nicole, I'm so glad you're in nursing classes now, though. I was so excited when I saw your name on the participant list.
I know. I was so excited to see you too. I was like, oh, how perfect that we'll be able to be into a class together.
Kelly's an awesome mentor to have, Nicole.
And you're graduating this May?
Well, no, because my capstone will push me back past graduation.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
If we could change the program, Kelly, we'd do it for you.
I know.
If I could do it, I absolutely would. Well, we'll see. You know what? You guys talk to the accreditors, see if they'll let us do that. Yeah. I don't think she's going to they'll let us do that, but we're going to pray that that'll all be fine. So, oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to, so here's what I'll do. I'll put our cultural activity up on the thing to try it, to test your knowledge. I think it's going to be too easy for you, actually. I'm finding that I'm picking too easy of questions. So I have a space race, not a space race. I have you ever used Socrates, either one of you?
No.
Okay, so because I figured probably what I should have done is given you the thing to create your little login on your phone. So I'll put it up on the course, and then you can take your little cultural quiz, and I'll post something in Global Trends just so I get to reach out and have contact with you, because I hate that I'm not in class with you. I'm actually teaching a whole class all by myself. Can you believe they allowed me to do that? I know, it's awesome. It's what I've waited for. Here I've been in the background just helping everybody else teach, and now they've let me loose. So I'm really
What are you
excited.
teaching?
I'm teaching population health.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Kelly, you'll be stuck with me in the capstone. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that, though.
Yeah, for many other reasons, and it has nothing to do with me. Yeah, I know. The end is almost near, so it's really good.
Woohoo!
I feel like I'm teaching a lot of courses this year. I can't remember what they are. So Nicole, you'll be stuck with me at some point. So I'm really looking forward to, I'd say torturing you, but I'm just so looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it too.
I really am. I finally, after all this work, get to do my most favorite thing, which is to spend time with you guys. So it's the greatest.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm so glad that you made it. for spending time with us and hearing my boring spiel. Make sure you get your malpractice
Yes,
insurance.
I wrote it all down. I'll be doing
Okay,
that.
if you have questions, reach out to me. I'll help
I
you
will.
figure it out. Probably more
will.
than $1 million for you, Kelly. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I'm thinking so. Yeah,
Terrible. Sorry to be the Debbie Downer of the presentation tonight.
yeah, no problem. No
All right,
problem.
well, enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'll be reaching out to you for accreditation stuff very soon, but we're getting there.
Yep.
We're almost ready.
Woohoo!
Oh,
2 weeks.
yes, we didn't.
I'll send you a Zoom.
Okay,
I'll send you a Zoom, and then
okay.
Kelly, I'm already set with you. So,
Yep, we're good to go.
all right,
so-
have a wonderful evening. I'm so
You
glad you
too.
came. Awesome. It's great to connect with you guys.
Yeah, it was good
Thank
to see you.
you.
again.
Good
All right,
night.
Take care.
Good night,
Okay,
Kelly.
Bye-bye.
bye. Oh, I lost my panel. Okay.
House isn't moving now.
It's not, is it stuck?
I don't know. No, it's being dumb. Oh, no, it's just, it was on the other screen.
Oh my gosh. All right. Bye,
All right,
Kelly.
see you, Lisa.
Have a great one.